about the state of the world? You can ask Faye probably. She can handle it. She's so good at that stuff.
I am going to ask the same question. Sometimes my voice projects, sometimes it doesn't. So tell me, is it projecting well enough to use
I
this?
will say we're recording for the folks who can't be there, so if you want to use the mic, that would be great for the
Okay,
video.
because it's better for the recording. Lord knows I love to help. Every time I hear myself introduced by somebody else, I always want to look around and see who in the world are they talking about. You know, it's embarrassing sometimes to hear yourself introduced. I am going to put this one up. Is that right? And now I can just like move this.
Yeah, it should. It's up on the screen, but it's.
Okay. So then I just move this way.
Yeah.
Oops, no. Oh. When you use somebody else's equipment.
There's a clicker up there too if you want to use the clicker.
Oh, okay. I'll use
That
the
should get
clicker.
you.
That's what I'll use. So who am I? I am a retiree from Steelgate, which you were just told about. I am also an active community volunteer. Have been since I was about 11 years old. The very first volunteer activity I ever participated in was as a tutor to a profoundly deaf child. She was 8 and needed tutoring in terms of helping to read. In Michigan, I don't know how it was or is in other states, but in Michigan, children who are deaf had to learn to also speak, read lips to the extent that they could, as opposed to only being dependent on American Sign Language. So it was a very interesting experience for me because I did, way back then, learn some sign language, but my job really was to help her learn how to read and do it in as much of her speaking voice as she could in fact do that. I am what I call an active listener, and I will say more about that in a minute, but active listening is a skill that I hone in the workplace. I am a lifelong learner, and hopefully some of you are also lifelong learners. I am a daughter, I am a wife, I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent, and I consider myself to be a good friend. What I didn't put in that description is I'm a teacher, I'm an instructor, I'm a facilitator. Because for me, all of that occurs as part of my lifelong learning pursuit. Now, everything that I just told you about me aren't things that you would know unless I or someone else told you. You cannot look at me and see that I am a retiree. You can look at me and see that I've got some kind of age on me because of this white stuff in my hair. But you really don't know what my age is. I mean, there's not anything that I've just told you about me that you can see. What I would like to do is talk more about that and the relationship to values. So, what you are likely to see when you look at me are what? What do you see when you look at me? Besides it being on the screen, you guys can speak. What do you see?
Glasses.
Pardon?
Glasses.
You see glasses. So that says something about my What else do you see? He said,
Also hearing aids.
yep, I was close enough to her so that she saw hearing aids. Again, a signal about my abilities. What else?
Wedding ring.
A wedding ring, so that tells you that I'm probably married or I just like this ring.
Gender presentation.
Pardon?
Gender presentation.
So the gender that I am, right?
What you're wearing.
Pardon?
What you're wearing.
Yeah, so you can see the clothing. I don't know what it says about me when you see it, but you can see what I'm wearing. Yes, young lady? Oops, I can't hear you. What did you say? Yep. Thank you. Because that truly is the first thing people see. That walks in the room first. People have to get pretty close to see hearing aids. Glasses you see, but so by a general appearance, but by color. The fact that I'm African American. What else? You said gender. So my gender is very visible. What else? Anything else? Yes? My height. Yes. I think I'm taller than I am. But you're right. My height. I am not very tall, but I have had people be surprised at how short I actually am. I'm not even gracing 5'2", to be completely honest. So what you likely see means that there are some things that you will assume about me, but still not quite know about me, right? You will assume certain things that are not part of the visibility. I have had people look at me and assume my level of education. I have had people look at me and assume my family status. I have had people look at me and assume my economic status. Any one of us could dress in a way that projects an image of greater or lesser economic status than you may assume that I have, right? What you don't see are my lived experiences. What you don't see is my education. What you don't see are the lessons that I have gained as a result of my lived experiences and my parents teaching to me. What you don't see is that I have been reading since I was 3 years old because my mother taught me how to read, because in my family, education was the key to success. There is a gentleman, and I never can remember his first name. His last name is Massey. He has for years spoken about, consulted on, and talked about this concept. You are what you were when. And his focus is really on the first 10 years of your life. Because for most of us, what has happened in those first 10 years are what sets the foundation for our values, sexually assaulted, you know, those kinds of events. Maybe you were beaten and robbed. Those kinds of significant events are going to create shifts. But for most of us, by the time we get to adolescence, a lot of our core values, our core beliefs about people have been shaped by the activities, life experiences, and individuals that have influenced us in our lives. Example for me, like I said, my mother taught me to read by the time I was 3. My dad was, well, first of all, let me back up. I was born in the great state of Mississippi. So I am highly influenced by a lot that occurred in Mississippi. Mississippi is not one of the most progressive states in the U.S. And if any of y'all are from Mississippi, I apologize in advance for talking badly about your own state. But it was mine. My dad, bless his heart, once he knew that he had married and had a child on the way, did everything he could to get out of the state of Mississippi very fast, because he knew that racism, and some levels of sexism, but racism was going to significantly color and limit the opportunities that I had. Because again, he wanted to see progression in his family. He wanted to see growth in his family. And so he had other relatives that were in a couple of northern states. Illinois was one, Michigan was another, and so he moved up here. My dad has always been a hard worker, and he had 2 main philosophies that I heard early and that I heard often. The first one was, I will help those who help themselves. So I gained an early value about hard work and about how to look at other people. If you're not bothering to take care of yourself, why would I spend my energy helping you take care? Sounds a little cold-blooded, but that was a reality that I grew up with. The other thing that I learned from my dad early and often was that your word is your bond. And so making commitments for me is extremely important. I am devastated when someone makes a commitment to me and they don't follow through. So when Megan said that thing about if you're going to call an RSVP, if it's something preventing you from coming, you need to let people know, because other people may be like me and extremely devastated to learn that people are not keeping their commitments. My mother, I am well over 50. I don't know why I don't want to tell my age, but I'm well over 50. And I grew up early and often hearing from my mother about telling the truth. I don't think, my mother's still alive, my mother is almost 90. I'm happy to tell her age. And I don't think that I have ever known my mother to tell a lie. If she has masked it very, very well. My mother, when we were growing up, if she suspected that we were not being truthful, this is what she would do. She would say, open your mouth. And she literally would peer down into your throat, look around, and say, I see that story in there. She couldn't bring herself to use the word lie. And at that point, you are confessing whatever it is. And that was such a strong action on her part that it imprinted on me the value of telling the truth. Because my mother could see through any kind of makeup, not telling the truth, telling a lie. So being truthful, being honest, being authentic were things, again, that were significant for me as an employee in companies is when I was a senior in high school. Are there any drama students in here, people that have performed? Fun, right? And it really helps you get outside yourself. It's just something. So I was able to be chosen for our school musical when I was a senior in high school. It was an awesome experience, going to rehearsals, learning a role, having lines, and being able to nurture something that I didn't really know that I really enjoyed doing, which was performing. And while I was a senior, I also was trying to figure out what college I was going to go to. And I had a moment that is often considered could be considered a moral or ethical dilemma. Because at this point, I had sort of a crash around my basic values, right? My values were to be truthful, to be authentic, to make commitments and keep them. And I had a dress rehearsal, and I had a must-attend college orientation session. The dress rehearsal was in Grand Rapids. The must-attend was on the other side of the state. What do? I'm 17 years old, trying to figure out which commitment I'm going to keep. What do you think I did? I'm just curious. What do you think I did? Yes, sir.
I think because you talked about how important education is to you and your family, that you made a decision to go to orientation.
Anybody else agree or disagree with that? Agree. That's exactly what I did. Now, in order to do that, I had to have a really good excuse to miss the dress rehearsal, because the director said, nobody misses dress rehearsal. You have to be dying to miss dress rehearsal. So, what was my excuse for missing dress rehearsal? I was dying. I was sick. I was so sick that there was no way that I could make the rehearsal. So I went to the school orientation because for me personally, that had a higher value, but both events meant that I had crashed between some base foundational values of mine. What do you imagine happened when I came back ready to perform in the play? Yes?
They wanted you to have a doctor's note, and they saw through a lie.
Okay, Lisa.
They gave you a part away as an understudy.
The director said, you missed the dress rehearsal. You knew that no one could miss the dress rehearsal. Your understudy is going to perform your part. You are out of the play. Now, my name was in the program. You know, I had people that were going to come. That kind of dilemma can happen in leadership all of the time. One of the things that I learned from that is that if I make a commitment, I need to keep it, even if it conflicts with something I want to do. That about itself is people are our best asset, right? Working for the company, I knew that there were a lot of human resources, policies, and practices that favored people, employees. A lot of people had worked there forever and a day. There was a lot of families that were part of the company. During the session that we had, we did strategy, and almost all of the strategy was economic. I'm in charge of organizational effectiveness and inclusion, so I'm very much involved in people activities. I'm involved in activities that are designed to help people feel a sense of belonging. Yet I've sat through 2 days of meetings and nobody has said anything about people, let alone people belonging. And so I was the newest person to the staff, but again, because of the value, the foundational basis I had, I raised my hand and I said, we talk about people are our best asset. We've been here for 2 days, and we haven't talked about one people strategy. If we're not going to develop any people strategies, we need to stop saying that that's one of our values. What do you imagine some of the room did? Young man? Yes. Who is this young upstart? Right? But I believe people when they say, this is what we value. It's one of the things that I value. And to his credit, our CEO at the time said, we weren't paying attention to that, Faye. Thank you. And so they spent the next couple of hours developing a couple of people-focused strategy so that they could maintain people are our best assets. One of the, for me, most humorous times that I had an encounter with an executive that I think is around values and ethics. One of the things that I had done was create a leadership council within the company made up of people from all levels of the company, from executive down to manufacturing floor. And one of the executives, unbeknownst to me, was very interested in my career and was doing some things behind the scenes to help advance my career. But I had a job that I felt was a ministry, that it was a mission, that it was to increase the diversity of this company, to help every leader understand what it means to have teams where people belong, throughout the U.S. We've done training, we've done all this stuff. And we were making significant progress, but the mission had not been accomplished yet. And this executive called me into his office, and he told me what arrangements he had made for my next steps. And I said to him, I appreciate what you've done and what you are doing for me. This is so unexpected. But we're not done with the mission that I've been given for the company. What do you imagine that he said to me? Not you again. He's going to get somebody to be more silent. Somebody over in this area. What do you imagine he said to me? Now he has taken me on as a mentee that I really didn't know about. I'm going to try and get somebody who hasn't spoken. Y'all are in a leadership development process. And sometimes leaders have to speak up. And if that's not part of your value set yet, I hope it becomes part of it. Because silence on the part of a leader, unless it is extremely strategic, isn't particularly valuable. said to me is this: Faye, I have gone to considerable effort on your behalf. Wow. What do you imagine I said? And that's this young man who raised his hand earlier.
I mean, maybe you could have said more politely, but you probably said, I didn't ask for that, because he didn't consult you with your development, where you were at that point in your career.
Good thought, but I understood something very important that I hope you all understand too in terms of the business environment. If a senior executive takes you under his or her wing, with or without your knowledge, and works on your behalf to help you advance in an organization, the correct answer is this: thank you. When do I start? That was the answer I gave, because I knew that he had gone out on a limb for me. He valued the values that he had seen from me, the behaviors that he had seen from me, in a way that he felt I could influence another part of the organization. I also knew politically that if I said, yeah, that's nice, but I'm really more focused on this mission, it probably would have been the last mission I would have performed in the company. So one of my values is being politically smart and being able to read that particular room. The last thing that I want to, this thing works a little bit different than I wanted. There are several quotes that have guided my behavior, right? And they are from people that I have admired over time. One is James Baldwin. How many of you are familiar with James Baldwin? Say something about him. Got none of it, John? What do you know about James Baldwin?
James Baldwin is one of the most powerful writers, particularly when it comes to civil rights. And I would argue he is just as powerful speaking and reading as Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, even though he doesn't always get the same attention.
What about this? Would you add anything?
I was just gonna say the poetry, the writing, like I know first poem.
And because of the time in which he lived, he actually had to leave the United States for quite a period of time. He lived in France because of discrimination that he received on several different levels. But one of the things that he wrote that I read when I was in high school, that I had used as a source of motivation, a source of inspiration, is this quote: "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." It has helped me deal with adversity So many times, we will lay back and wait for others to do. And so my question to you as potential leaders, if you're not already leading in some aspect, are you standing on a good, healthy dose of courage when you need to face things that may be difficult? How many of you know who Simon Sinek is? Nobody? Oh, you gotta look this guy. He's one of the most humane guides, leaders, that does a lot with leadership development. His first book that I was aware of is First Start with Why, because it's not about what you do, it's about why you do it. Oh, you guys need to know about Simon Sinek. He says our choices reveal our intentions. Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them. And what I like about all of those quotes is they all come out of a place of your values, your beliefs are your foundation, and they really reveal who you are. So some of the things that I have learned is lead with humility and by example. I have never asked anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do. When I was a banker, I kept a window open so that when tellers got swamped, I could jump in and work the window. I've done training with trainers that I have had. When I was a leader in manufacturing, which was the job that executive wanted me to take, I was really quite frightened because I never worked in a factory before. But he felt like I had a value set that could help other leaders in manufacturing learn. When I went out there, I had a machine or a spot on the line that I could step into whenever my teams got swamped. Because again, a leader doesn't ask their teammates, their subordinates to do things that they wouldn't do. Because if you do, if you ask your team to do something you wouldn't do, what message are So you need to choose people who you really want to invest in. What questions? Yes, sir.
What other authors do you think have had a profound impact on you, or do you find yourself reading regularly?
So I used to read a lot. I don't as much anymore because I'm not so I'd be afraid to tell you who to read, but there are so many good authors out there talking about leadership. Edward Stein, I think it's Edward, it's either Edward or Edward, it's Ed Stein, has a book on humility. It's excellent. You know, not enough people think about the role of humility and being humble in a leader role. So that would be one that to me is timely. Simon Sinek's work, you know, Start With Why or Leaders Eat Last, talks about how military leaders behave, and about how leaders, again, put their people first. So my value set is around investing in people, doing what I can to lift people up and help them shine. Leaders, two things. Leaders make sure that their teams receive credit for anything that works, and that the leader takes the blame for anything that fails. Some people don't operate that way. But if you want your team to do everything that they can to make your work successful, that would be one thing that I would leave you with as well.
Maybe just not really about one thing, and I guess my question would be, how would you say like faith and that helps resonate your leadership style when she is open to leaders? Because I feel like sometimes we can like have quotes, we can give an examples, sometimes it might be right, but like some of that stuff just don't hold you through. Sometimes it is faith. So what would you say that how faith plays a big role in how you lead or how you continue to turn adversity or
So I actually am a woman of faith as well. You know, a lot of spaces don't necessarily encourage conversations about faith. I'm not ashamed to talk about that. You know, I believe in God. I'm a practicing Christian, but I also honor and respect those that are practicing Jews or Islamic. I have Islamic members in my family. I have Baptists in my family. So to me, I count on surrounding myself with others of faith, not necessarily of religious dogma, but of faith. You know, people who will say to me that you got this, that you know, God has got your back. Those are things that I do. I have a couple of really close friends who I can have those conversations with. I think all of us need to have those circles of people who can help us repair when we are feeling damaged in any way. Whether it's a faith circle or, you know, friends from way back in the day circle, a common activity circle, but some way to get refilled. Prayer is also a way to do that. Meditation, you know, doing mindfulness.
I'm wondering, what is a time during your career when the lesson of leadership is situational, not absolute, was really important?
We had a project. We were working on and this is when I led an international learning and development team. We had a to achieve the deadline that had been set for us. So I had to weigh the cost of missing the deadline with the cost of not supporting this teammate. And so we found people who could pick up some slack, but this individual was given permission to deal with their crisis in a supportive manner, and I had to deal with my boss around why we were going to miss the deadline. And fortunately for me, that I was working for someone who also had a value of people, who then worked with me to figure out how we could get close, if not exactly on time. And because the other choice was to, I don't care what your problems are, we have a deadline to meet, and if you don't want to be part of this, we will absolutely replace you. That to me is a leader who thinks that I'm in charge, and what I say goes, and you will do it on my timeline, and it doesn't matter what's happening to you. For me, situational leadership really is around adjusting my leadership to support whatever the circumstances are. Is there another question?
Let's do one more question. So whoever thinks of that.
Me? Okay. Thank you for spending time with us today and sharing some of your experiences with us. One of your experiences I found very admirable, how you were tutoring someone who was staff, a young girl that was staff. I'm sure that you faced a lot of adversity in that. But it shows, it demonstrates that you invest in people. How would you say, as we are all transitioning into careers where someday we'll hopefully be leaders in our careers, how do you invest in people who, frankly don't want to be invested in? They're not showing up when they said they would show up. They're not fulfilling what they said they would do. Do you invest in them at all?
So it's interesting that you should ask that question, because it goes back to my dad's thing around, I'm willing to help whoever is willing to help themselves, right? And if you're not willing to do for you, then why should I do for you too? I did have a situation where I had a factory employee who was pretty good about disappearing on the job, and his immediate supervisor was getting very, very frustrated and wasn't sure what to do about this person, because they were fairly skilled at what they did, but they kept disappearing. So he had said to them, if you don't improve, this person also didn't come to work as frequently as they needed to, you're going to have a conversation with the superintendent, which is me. And so he ended up having that conversation with me, and I've had this conversation with a couple of different people where I have said to them, and I know the environment today is a little bit different, but I had said to them, we love having you work here. The kind of stuff you do for us is highly valued, but you don't have to work for us. There are other places that you can go, and if you keep not showing up, you keep hiding out, you will find yourself no longer here. And I think that that's a caring way to talk to people. We appreciate you, we want you, but if you don't want to be here, you can make other choices. And I think that you have to be authentic with people in that way. If people aren't showing up, they're not helping you out anyway, you're probably stepping in doing their stuff. So why would you keep them? Why would you continue to give them something valuable from the organization if they're not putting value back into the organization? Again, situational around leadership. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Faye is currently a faculty member with Honors College again, so Those of you who are returning students who've done values clarification, but something that I love to do is to regularly revisit your values. Because where your values fall in your life and what you're valuing can depend on the chip a little bit. So, you will see 2 sheets of paper, orange and yellow. You should have one of each. You're going to start with your yellow sheet of paper. Okay? They are. You can think either Chris or Chris for that. So you're going to start with your yellow piece of paper. Okay? And what this activity is touchstone versus practicing values. So touchstone values are when you are just thinking broadly about your values, where you value them. You are going to rank them from 1 to 20, with 1 being most valuable, 20 being least valuable to you. Yeah, you guys need more? Okay, great. Great, perfect. I have one more set. Okay, so start with your yellow. When you're done with your yellow, you're going to move over to your orange. And I'm going to give you 7 minutes to do both. Don't overthink it. Technically, there's no right or wrong answer. One is what you value the most. There is a timer